This is KLEAN Radio, and it starts right now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Welcome to KLEAN Radio for a Sunday night. Glad you're with us. Andrew Spanswick is here, of course. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Pat. How you doing?
I'm good. Brooklyn in the house. Brooklyn in the house.
Borough Park to be exact.
Well, I mean, you know, come on.
Yeah.
You say Brooklyn, all right?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Steve Guttenberg is here. And a little later, we'll talk about his movie. You know, Hollywood's starting to look into redemption more and rehabilitation. And Steve is part of like $100 million worth of movies. How much of that money did you get?
I got 64 cents.
Okay. Well, then you're about along with everybody else.
Every cent.
But he's a basketball fan, so he's going to sit here and listen to us talk about RJ Bell's going to join us in a minute and talk about March Madness. Chris Herren's going to be on. Steve's here. But first, there's a troubling, not troubling, but kind of a think piece in the Atlantic magazine about treatment and AA and which one works and does one size fit all.
Yeah, I think it's actually an interesting article, and it got a lot of attention because it's talking about ideas within AA that are not tested, and that there's been a series now of articles and books and research done that show that AA isn't really as effective as it claims to be when it originally came out. AA originally claimed to have a 75% success rate, and we know that it's really actually somewhere in the single digits, 8 to 10%. But what's interesting, I think, is that in the article it goes on to explain in detail all these different things like naltrexone, which is like a blocking agent that makes people not feel a desire to drink and curbs craving. The part that people that write articles like this often don't understand is that there's a multitude of different elements within an addictive personality beyond just the craving and the use of the drug. There's generally something underlying it, either something that has to do with an underlying mental illness or a series of social issues or depression or bad relationship, or, you know, they're in poverty. So there's a lot of issues that need to be solved besides just the addiction itself. One thing I did really like about the article was that it talked about that, you know, we need to intervene earlier. The idea that we should always wait till people bottom out, as they say in AA, you know, that they have the worst consequences ever before they get help. That isn't necessarily where people should go.
Right.
That there's ways to get into treatment earlier, and there's ways to, you know, I always talk about use, abuse, and addiction. And so if you're abusing something, it might be a good time to start working on that problem before it goes into full-blown addiction.
But we're not ripping AA. AA's got some great qualities and principles and used in a lot of rehab centers. But the bottom line is that one size doesn't fit all. And the problem we've learned, at least you've learned and we've all learned, is more than it's not a moral problem, for one thing. And secondly, there's just so many pieces to that quilt.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you look at what we do at KLEAN Treatment Centers, it's different than AA alone. We use AA. People can go to AA. We encourage the use of people joining the fellowship of AA and learning the knowledge that can be learned within that group and from other people. But to say that the treatment of addiction is limited to just AA, I think is too limiting. And most people that are in AA have had other sorts of treatment or have other sorts of treatment going on. So, you know, there's medical issues that have to be addressed. There's mental health issues that have to be addressed and can be addressed. But, you know, AA is an important part of reconnecting to people and associating people that have been through and have the problem of addiction, and it gives them a lot of insight into their own behaviors. And so it certainly holds a very valuable thing. Like I always say, all these people in this field need to get on the same side of the table.
Exactly, that's
right?
the problem.
Nobody here is trying to like make people sicker, right? So if there's criticisms of AA, that's fine, you deal with it, But there's criticisms of every other scientific method of treating addiction. But everybody at the end of the day is trying to solve the same problems. And that's what it comes down to. So let's all get on the same side of the table, whether you're Sinclair model, medical model, Hazelton model, 12-step model, straight 12-step model, purely AA. Everybody should be trying to help everybody with whatever works.
And in their own way, they all help a little bit. Steve Guttenberg is here, and RJ, I know you're there. We'll get to you in a second. But you were saying when you go out in Hollywood, there's so much pressure to do stuff. I know you don't, but
Yeah, it's a really interesting part of the ideology of film and television is being part of the gang. I've always felt that Hollywood is very akin to a high school, and you want to be
with money.
Yeah, a high school with money,
or no money,
or
chasing
no money.
money.
But you want to be part of the gang. You want to be invited. And I find if you don't use, there are certain issues and places that you don't get invited.
We're going to talk about your movies in a minute, but I want you to sit there. R.J. Bell is on. R.J. Bell probably knows more about gambling, how to gamble, how not to gamble, and March Madness than anybody. My old friend R.J. How are you, R.J.?
Hey, Pat. Nice to be on with you again.
Thank you. And March Madness, did you fill out a bracket or?
You know, I did. They're a local show, Kevin and Bean in L.A. I do. They goaded me into it. So usually I don't do a public one because I can't really win. Because if I win, it's like, of course. And if I have a bad year, it's like, oh, look. But I did do one public one.
Now, Steve Guttenberg's here and Andrew Spanswick is here as well. I wanted to talk to you, though, about I don't think, and the reason I want you on is that I don't think people realize how much is gambled during these 2 weeks. Give us the numbers.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the estimate for the global handle, so worldwide, 12 billion, that's with a B, billion, on March Madness. That's more than the Super Bowl. Now, we've got obviously 60-plus games, but still the biggest single event of the year for betting. And what you also have is a lot of people who get involved in a social fashion where they don't really follow college basketball, they don't really bet a lot, but they put $10 in a bracket, and that's at the office, or some buddies are doing it online. So it really, I think there's only 2 times a year that if you don't engage, you're left out. It's with the Super Bowl, and it's with March Madness.
Do you find that, R.J. Bell, do you find that people re-gamble then once these brackets are ripped up, like if you thought Kansas would win? Or?
I think a lot less do. I think that if you're the type that bets at any point during the regular season, so college basketball starts in November, December, January, February, then you're into March. If you're betting any point before March, you're likely going to be betting all through March Madness. There's also a group that only bet during March Madness, but still, the spread bettors, the guy saying, okay, tonight, for example, Louisville is a 2.5-point underdog against Northern Iowa. Those guys are a smaller group and gals relative to the bracket. So the brackets universe is gigantic, non-basketball fans, fans, non-batters, batters. But once you get past them, it's the basketball fans that like to bet, which is still a big universe, but smaller than the brackets.
So, RJ, you've been in this business for a long time, right? So,
yes.
Having seen lots of people that gamble, can you give us any insight into what you consider healthy recreational gambling and then when it becomes a problem for people?
It's funny because the old joke is, well, the only problem with sports betting that you could have is if you lose. Because the assumption is, imagine a scenario that you're doing X, Y, or Z, and every week or consistently you're being paid, right? So you make $5,000 one week, you lose $2,000 the next, you make $4,000. So net, if you're winning, it doesn't seem like there's a potential problem. I actually question that, but obviously if you're losing, it's even exacerbated because you've got the distraction and the compulsiveness element plus the practical day-to-day reality of you're losing money and, it's time to pay the mortgage and you don't have the money. And the thing about betting, you've got to bet an amount that matters to you. So for any listener out there, that amount might be $1, it might be $100,000. But if you don't feel that juice, that sense of, oh, I won, that's exciting, or, oh, I lost, isn't that horrible? Everyone has to gamble to a degree that makes where they feel it. So that is dangerous because you're only going to feel it. You could think, well, a guy like Charles Barkley, he's talked, I think, pretty candidly about his sports betting. He's lost a lot of money, but he's made it clear he needs to bet an amount that matters. He bet $500 a game. It doesn't matter if he wins or loses.
No, I've gambled with him. He doesn't care because he's got the money. He enjoy. Those guys will just bet until the 17% winning percentage comes around.
So if you had an unlimited amount of money, though, the problem isn't really with. I mean, I hear what you're saying, RJ, and it makes total sense to me. It's got to be relevant to whether there's a swing or not that matters for you. But what's interesting, I think, is this idea that even if you had all the money in the world, the problem with gambling isn't necessarily the losing of the money. That's a symptom of it. The problem with people that really have compulsive gambling is that they need it, and they need it at the expense of everything in their life, not just money.
And I'd agree with that. To me, the most gamblers lose, and the fact that they're losing real money is, as I said, I think an additional problem on top of the compulsiveness, the distraction. And I'm certainly no professional in areas like this, but being around a lot of guys that's bet a lot of money, and I could make the case with compulsive behavior, it's a distraction. It's that this is what's important, and there's a certain tranquility in that the day-to-day stuff that might frustrate the average person, and listen, I went to college. I was around a lot of drug users in college, like most college kids. You see it, is part of the appeal, it seems obvious, is the distraction, that this is what matters, the other stuff doesn't. I see an analogy with a lot of gambling, where that game, the result of that game is what matters, and the buzz off of that is dangerous.
RJ Bell runs pregame.com. He doesn't endorse gambling, but he lays it out, man, and he is the best in the business. You know what my last question is, don't you?
I haven't heard that. Now, you emailed me this question, but I haven't heard it live for a little while.
Are you in the mafia?
Once again, it's been over a year, Pat, but my attorney says I cannot comment.
I love you, man. RJ Bell, he's the best. Thanks, RJ.
Thank you.
A loyal friend, and he makes a lot of good points there about gambling, and so do you, Andrew, about it's got to be a significant amount. When it starts to affect your life and whether or not you can buy groceries, then that's the problem.
Yeah, and then also, like I said, if you're doing it, even if you have a lot of money, if you're doing it at the expense of other important things like your children, spending time with your children, if you're just so driven and consumed by looking at your phone all the time for stats on games and the score, and you can't be present for things that are important in your life, that's a problem. I'm
going to lay money that Steve Guttenberg's next movie, The Pride of San Quentin, is going to do well. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. You don't gamble, do you, Steve?
I don't gamble, actually. No, I don't. But I'll take that bet. Thanks a lot, man.
No, we're going to do that.
Okay.
My mom told me don't trust a man without a vice. So, Steve, what's your vice?
You got it right here, baby. Snickers.
Snickers.
That's it, baby.
Look at that.
That's the NFL. Candy Bar of America.
The Candy
Bar of America.
By the way, Butterfingers, Snickers. You can call us at 800-222-5222. Pretend it's an easy number to remember. 800-522. I'm sorry. I can't even remember it. 800-222-5222. A lot of the show today, by the way, we're on Facebook.com/KLEAN Radio. Chris Herren played college basketball and was in the NBA and toyed around with that for a while. But he had a troubling life. It's back together again, thank God. Chris, are you there? Chris, how are you, man?
I'm great, brother.
Good to talk to you. It's been a while. And Chris is doing great things. You know, Andrew Spanswick is here and Steve Guttenberg is here. And we were talking earlier about we love people that have a problem and hit a bottom of sorts, and then or a bottom period, and then do something about it. What happened to you?
You know, I think I've always had the problem. It just took me a while to recognize it and address it. I was a high school kid who started off like most, you know, drinking in the woods or down in a basement, and that, you know, the unnatural or natural transition, whatever you want to call it, you know, obviously went down to cocaine in college and painkillers in the NBA and heroin as well. You know, I was 22 and I spent $20 on a 40 milligram Oxycontin, and I had never heard of it. And that $20 turned to $20,000 a month habit.
Wow.
So, Chris, did you start your drug use through regular prescriptions besides the Oxycontin that you bought? Like, as an athlete, did you have injuries, and did that bring you into being exposed to these kinds of medications? Or
no, I mean, I grew up in a city where, you know, parents had Vicodins around, you know, right. Percocets. You heard older kids in your neighborhood talking about it.
Raid the
bathroom
cabinet. I did that too.
Yeah.
What city did you grow up in, Chris?
I grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts. South coast of Massachusetts, and you know it's an old mill town, textile mill town, and big on basketball, and I got caught up in that lifestyle a little bit, and having no idea I had the bug, and like most of us.
Oh yeah, me too. It hit me like a train. After a while, I was just having fun. I thought,
right,
and most of it was,
I speak quite a bit, and high school kids all over the country, college athletes, so on and so forth. And I said, listen, I sat in the same basement you're sitting in that your mother tells you it's safe down there as long as you don't drive. Some come out of the basement, some don't. I was one that got stuck down there for a while.
Chris Herron's with us, the pride of Durfee High School, by the way, in Fall River, and now he started the Heron Project, which after his, shall we say, fall, decided to help other people. It's been ridiculously successful. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Chris Mullen and his wife helped me when I was struggling, and
Chris went through it.
Sure. And when I got sober, I wanted to give back, and I felt bad for the families who didn't have the resources to go to treatment, whether it was lack of insurance or what insurance companies would pay, or just lack of resources in general. So we started raising money and helping families and putting them in positions where they could, get affordable treatment, if not free, as well as putting them in treatment centers that we believe was best fit for them. I think that model, I heard the introduction about AA and different models of treatment. I think one thing that has to change is that treatment centers need to disclose, who's in there and the age and the sex and the substances that are currently being treated. It's really hard for an alcoholic to sit in a room that's 55 years old with a bunch of 20-year-old heroin addicts.
Yeah, Chris, it's interesting because the industry, nonprofit and for-profit for that matter, is driven by different types of demand. And, there's some people that believe that, like Betty Ford, that women should be treated separately from men. We now have a proliferation of treatment centers that actually help just young adults. There's actually now treatment centers that just treat young adults that have relapsed, which I thought was an interesting sort of new thing. So, I own a bunch of different rehabs. They all do different types of treatment, have different sort of what we call treatment milieus. So, the type of people that are there and then the type of treatment that goes on. And you're absolutely right. It's really important that you're able to put the right client in the right type of treatment, because it's not just one size fits all the time.
And not to mention the fact that you're asking a struggling, heartbroken mom to, drop $35,000 blind.
Yeah.
And as you said in the opening, 9-10% chance of getting sober, and to not have the data backing up your decision on whether or not to send your loved one to that center, I think is unfortunate, and I think that's what people need.
There's a lot of great things happening in the treatment industry because of electronic medical records, where everything goes into a computer. Everything is now much easier to track, and the insurance companies are starting to think about payment only based on outcomes. So there's the development of outcome data, of metrics, that pieces of information that tell us what's important and what's not, is becoming a very, very important part of the addiction treatment field going forward. So I think you're going to see not only that we're going to have more data and the negatives and the positives, but eventually what we're going to see is that data is actually going to be able to use to perfect and create better outcomes through what we learn about what works and what doesn't. So I'm really excited about the future. I think that, we're just at the beginning of the treatment of addiction and mental health, for that matter. We know so little still, and there's so much to learn, which I think, in a strange way, is disappointing as that sound, also should give people a great sense of hope as to what can be developed in the future.
Ironically, Chris's book is called Basketball Junkie, which everybody pretends to be this time of year. But I love you for what you're doing, the HeronProject.org. And you go on there, look about it. It's a beautiful website. And, man, you're walking the walk and talking the talk. I like it. It's the biggest assist you've ever given.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Chris. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Take care, bro.
There he goes, Chris Herren, who had his problems and took care of them, you know? I mean, we like that. And it's all about redemption. And back to this article for a minute. Steve Guttenberg is patiently sitting here, and have you learned anything yet?
Well, you know, it's so interesting to hear this discussion about basically, it seems to me, rejuvenation. You know, taking people that are broken and mending them and rehabilitating them. And so many times our society is a throwaway society. You know, you throw stuff away.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore, you throw it away. And there is that illusion that a human being is like that. And it's so great to hear this sort of conversation. It's so inspiring.
That's kind of what your next movie's about, right?
Yeah. The Pride of San Quentin is about the greatest warden of all time, Clinton S. Duffy, who created an ideology called rehabilitation,
right,
where you would take a human being who the prison system before 1950 was based on corporal punishment. The movie Cool Hand Luke is something that everybody would know that. They would throw him in the cooler, no bread, no water, or beat them publicly.
That's what we do to homeless people, basically.
Well, yeah.
Well, then we put them in prison.
Yeah, but you know, they would put people on chain gangs in those days, making them break rocks.
Chain gangs are actually coming back. Mississippi's got chain gangs again, and
I heard something.
Yeah,
to that
down in the
effect.
South. Yeah, it's amazing. You're driving down the highway and there's these guys all chained together, cleaning brush and
Yeah,
stuff.
but it's humiliating.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
And you'll see that is going to hopefully be phased out. You know, we in the United States have 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's incarcerated population, and that's wrong. And you know, there are people in prison right now for selling marijuana, whereas we have.
How about for having a roach in their pocket?
Right, and we have dozens of states that are making it legal, and we'll have one day 50 states making it legal.
I know a guy that actually he got busted in like '69 for having just over an ounce of marijuana. He spent 2 years in Attica and was there during the riot.
It's unbelievable.
And he survived it.
It's unbelievable.
Well, in Texas,
but can you imagine for like an ounce of pot, you have to go through the Attica riots?
I got to do some work here. Our call-in number is 800-222-5222. Our 24/7 hotline number is 888-601-6040. 888-601-6040. We were talking about this article in the Atlantic Magazine, and one of the things that we do here is that, you know, if you can get a decent outpatient program to combine with your Alcoholics Anonymous, which I really don't like to talk about because it's anonymous, but I do. And please don't call me or come up to me in a meeting. I go to meetings. I love them. It's great. But Andrew, I mean, the components now of recovery, which we can tell you about at 888-601-6040, are also outpatient, inpatient, looking at yourself, trying to determine what the hell's wrong with you.
Yeah, I mean, we call it the continuum of care in the industry and in healthcare. There's continuums of care, as there are continuums of the illness of addiction. So we have everything from beginning with outpatient treatment or assessments to daily intervention to, you know, maybe 3 days a week you come in and get help, all the way to inpatient and full detox. So it's an interesting, you know, thing, and there's a lot of components to it, and AA is an important part of that. Can help without, you know, when you're done and prevent some relapse, hopefully. But there's a lot of people that need a lot more help than just AA in the beginning. Detox can be very dangerous, and I encourage people to really take this as a serious medical issue, not just as a social or moral issue.
We come back, more from Steve Guttenberg. We'll find out if he thinks that Tom Selleck is better looking than me.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous.
Which way?
I know. Well, that and much more coming up here on KLEAN Radio.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol but unable to commit to an inpatient rehab stay? Introducing KLEAN Treatment Center's Outpatient Treatment. This drug and alcohol treatment program is designed specifically for the working professional. Don't let your commitments of running a business, taking care of a child, or maintaining your college classes get in the way of your recovery from addiction. With daytime, evening, or individualized programs, KLEAN's Outpatient Treatment will fit your life. Call now for a free screening. Professional guidance is standing by.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for joining the KLEAN Radio channel. Be sure to subscribe and get weekly episodes and clips. And comment. Like or dislike, whatever. Be nice. We respond to everything. Pat O'Brien along with Andrew Spanswick. Steve Guttenberg's in the studio. They're very patient, sitting here. I've known you for quite a while.
Yeah.
First of all, Police Academy is probably literally the funniest thing that ever happened, right? I mean, was it much fun doing it?
Just a great movie, a great series, and I was really lucky to get it. You know, I always think about great movies that actors, there's always 20 actors, 100 actors who can do every role. So I was lucky to get it. But we did have a good time because all the people are really funny. You know, there's an old rule. You want to make a funny movie, put funny people in it.
Exactly. What a concept, huh?
Yeah, it's weird. But a lot of people don't think that. Yeah.
And then,
but I was lucky. A guy named Hugh Wilson directed it.
Yeah.
Who did WKRP, and Paul Maslansky produced it. Both funny guys. And, you know, I got lucky.
And then Three Man and the Baby worked with two of my good friends, Ted Danson and Tom Selleck. Now Tom.
They don't talk like that about you, which is strange. Because you're a good egg, and I don't know why they say those things.
I was in Jamaica with Ted Danson one time, and I saw him across the lobby, and I gave him the finger as a joke, you know.
Right.
And it wasn't him. It was somebody else.
Always an issue that could create an issue.
A problem. Steve's got a new movie coming out. We'll talk about that in a second. First, Buddy Totten's here. Buddy, what are they saying about us?
How's it going? So here's what's happening on Facebook.com/Clean Radio and at Twitter, on Twitter at Clean Radio. First up, Daniel says, Pat, I have 8 months clean, and I'm in the process of trying to repair my marriage. I cheated on my wife several times while I was using. I'm fraught with guilt. Should I tell her?
Yes.
That's your answer?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I know people who've had affairs who are married, and it just creates another level of fear and despair. And if you're going to keep doing it, you might as well. I don't know. My answer would be yes. I'm just so honest these days. Although if it was me, I'd probably say no.
You remember what Dean Martin said?
Everybody else has to say yes, but Pat will say no.
Dean Martin.
I don't have that
what
problem
did Dean Martin
anymore.
say?
Deny.
Right, so this isn't me. Andrew, what do you think?
I think it's different for every situation, every person. I think it really goes to the core basis of what your relationship is really about. If you're about, rigorous honesty and you have a good relationship and you're open to that, then I think that, being able to talk openly about it is the most healthy thing possible. If you're in a relationship that's more transactional and based solely sort of on, say, supporting children, and the primary relationship isn't important as much anymore, then I think it's important to look at the secondary consequences of your actions on other people around you.
If you're doing it once, right, you're going to keep doing it.
If you did it once, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, if it's a problem for someone and it's not mutually disclosed and they don't have, and it can affect other people, it's something they should certainly talk about with someone.
Right.
One more, buddy.
You got it. So Alex wants to know, Pat, do you have addiction in your family? And if so, do you think it influenced your addictive behavior?
Well, who knows? But my grandfather was an alcoholic. My father died of the disease. My sister has a different kind of obesity problem. And then the rest of them I'd rather not talk about. But yes, everywhere in my family. And I think that's more the norm than often, I think. But I didn't get beat up. Nothing happened to me when I was a kid.
Right.
Thank God. Except my dad was drunk a lot.
Yeah, actually, the correlation.
But he was an Irish drunk, so he was kind of funny.
The studies more recently now are showing there's a higher and higher correlation. I think the reason that is that a lot of the younger or older generations, were misdiagnosed or not identified or didn't, qualify under whatever standard. So now we have more, clinical assessment and diagnosis of people as actually being addicts or alcoholics.
Right.
While before, your drunk grandmother at 67. That's just grandma being grandma. Nobody really.
I had somebody once tell me the doctor should ask if you're an O'Brien or a Kennedy before he diagnoses you. Buddy Totten, thank you very much.
You bet.
Good job as always.
You got it. The conversation continues on Facebook.com/Clean Radio and on Twitter at Clean Radio.
Hey, and Buddy, I just want to thank you because our Facebook and Twitter and our whole social media thing is just blowing up. And Buddy's really the guy at the helm, and he's really made a great job of making that happen. So
well, thank you. It's my pleasure. Yeah. You got it.
You putting my selfies on there?
I am.
Okay, good.
Every week, man.
Steve Guttenberg is here. Okay, Steve. The Pride of San Quentin, how did you come? I mean, you go from Police Academy to Cocoon to Three Men and the Baby, and you're a funny guy, and you look at you and you kind of laugh because you're known as being a comical guy. But now, when we were talking before the show...
What do you mean by that?
Because when I look at you, I
see...
Up yours, Pat. Yeah. I can't do that. We're on television. But you know what I mean. You think Police Academy. but not any longer. And we were talking before the show that a lot of Hollywood is now going for redemption and rehabilitation. Why do you think? And what's the Pride of San Quentin about? Here we go.
Well, first of all, I think society is coming into a new age of adulthood. I think that adolescence and adolescence behavior was rewarded, but I think that we're coming into something else where we're trying to put down our childish toys and take responsibility for our planet, especially with the environment. I think that woke a lot of people up that we really have to take responsibility. And our new movie is called The Pride of San Quentin. But I've been lucky enough to do, I'm an actor, but the equipment I was born with was sort of a comedic equipment. But I've been lucky to be in some dramas the day after a great television special and Boys from Brazil and Bedroom Window, but also Police Academy, Three Men, and Short Circuit. They're comedic. But our new film is called The Pride of San Quentin, which is actually about relationship between Ralph Blackie Schwam, who was one of the greatest pitchers in late 1940s and early 50s. He had a 100-mile-an-hour fastball that in those days they didn't clock them with a speed gun. You actually clocked it with a car going 100 miles an hour. It would pass the pitcher. The pitcher would throw the ball, and that's how you can tell how fast the ball's going. And he was actually compared to Bob Feller, who was one of the greatest pitchers of all time, who had 100 miles an hour.
And one of the meanest people of all time, but
and
still.
A mean guy. So you know all about these guys.
Yeah.
But actually, Blackie threw against Joe DiMaggio. Dizzy Dean was a big fan of his. And our film is about the relationship between Blackie Schwam, Clinton S. Duffy, who was a great warden, who created rehabilitation. And when Blackie was convicted of a murder, came into San Quentin, Clinton S. Duffy told him, I'm going to change the tracks of the penal system forever. From corporal punishment, where you were treated like an animal, to taking broken men and broken women, like a doctor takes a broken bone. He mends it, he rehabilitates it, and they walk out of the doctor's office. I'm going to take broken men and women, I'm going to mend them, rehabilitate them, and they're going to walk out of prison. Now, the state system and the federal system doesn't want people to be paroled, because once somebody is paroled, they lose money. Now, we know that we have a real penal system problem, and we're trying to close prisons in this country. That's the idea of prison, is to rehabilitate people, have them come out and become important members of society, contributing members of society. And interestingly enough, Clinton S. Duffy was the first warden to institute Alcoholics Anonymous, to take men and women who have these problems with drugs or alcohol and make a system for them and an ideology that they can come out and be clean. He gave them also a newspaper, a college-educated opportunity to have a college education, to have a high school education, a jute mill. And
this was at San Quentin.
At San Quentin, and a baseball team. And he said to Blackie Schwam, you're going to be the captain of my baseball team. You are going to have the idea and the opportunity to make men and women, and men obviously in San Quentin, give them the opportunity to play like free men. And you're going to play IBM, and you're going to play Levi Strauss, and all the Bay Area corporations. And for 9 innings, you're going to feel like a free man. And he instituted, and I actually just spoke to a warden from London. When I was talking about Clinton Duffy, she said, oh, the greatest warden of all time. He started rehabilitation and changed the penal system for everybody all over the world, and changed men and women's lives forever, and their families' lives forever. So it's a fantastic story. It has such historical value and also entertaining value.
You know, the current prison system now has become the home for the mentally ill and the homeless.
It sure has.
And, we've shut down all the acute care psychiatric hospitals and state hospitals, and they're now in the hospital, and we don't really see much care going on. I think there's one psychiatrist for about every 250 plus prisoners.
Yeah.
So what do you think, looking at if this guy was around now, right, greatest warden of all time, what do you think he would be saying about the current state of mental health and homelessness, and how we basically use prisons as a dumping ground for any social problem that we have?
Well, he'd be very unpopular in the prison system.
Right.
Because
in the age of the supermax prison.
Exactly. He wants to close prisons. He wants men and women to come in, learn what they've got to learn, change, and go out, other than those who can't be changed, which is a very small part of it. lots of, in the Reagan era, and who perhaps one of our last idyllic presidents that we really could look up to, or the country looked up to and said, hey, he's going to save our country. He was the one who said, listen, we got to stop. We have to close all these psychiatric institutes. And slowly they started closing, and these men and women were thrown on the street. Now, the population has no patience for them. And the enforcement is, we're going to find out something that they're going to do that breaks the law, and we're going to put them in prison. And they don't need to be in prison. They need to be somewhere where they can get help, legitimately help. And it's a real shame. So I do think Clinton S. Duffy would probably be so important today to take a stand and say, that's not where they need to be. We need to create a place that can help them, or at least monitor them and keep them stable.
Steve Guttenberg is here, and Andrew and I talk about this all the time, that our focus should be on helping people rather than throwing them behind bars or a curtain or an iron curtain or whatever.
Punishment. We know that punishment really is not really all that effective.
No.
It can work temporarily with behavior mod and limited amounts, behavior modification, and limited amounts of punishment and properly measured punishment. But what we see now is just a blanket sort of really classism. We're deciding this whole group of people, because they have these issues, either mental health or addiction, or that were in poverty and committed crimes. And some of them are actually really just criminals. There are sociopaths and other people that are not redeemable. But we're deciding that we're just going to lump them all in the same place. And we're just, the goal now is just to lock people up. And you're right. The way that the economics work with it is that it's actually cheaper to put someone in prison than to deal with the real problem in the short run. In the long run, it's actually much more expensive. And
then we get them.
Right. And so it's industry driven. You're right. There's an economic incentive in the current time for people to get money to treat people. Just stick them in prisons. There isn't an economic incentive in the short run to treat people humanely and take care of their problems.
But what happened to ethics?
Take care of them?
What happened to I want to do the right thing? What happened to politicians who love our country and don't want to get into office so they can become on a board of a corporation? They go into office to legitimately help our country, to go into service and know the honor of having service to our country. And that is the same thing as our prison system, as the post office, as the telephone company.
The VA, all those places.
Any of those things.
I always say this about the American Medical Association. I mean, they let go of a lot of power and they turned it over. And if you really look at the history of a lot of that, a lot of it actually stems back to the Chrysler bailout in the 80s. Do you remember?
Sure.
Chrysler had
Lee Iacocca.
He had to borrow $1 billion to save Chrysler, which is now owned by the Germans. So anyway, so the deal that he made was that the government would give him $1 billion and he would be able to reduce his health insurance costs by self-insuring.
Right.
And that was the beginning of HMOs. And since then, the business of insurance has affected the quality of care that we get and access to care. But in fairness to the insurance companies and to big business and the escalating costs of healthcare, as medicine gets better, we also have more and more kinds of treatment. And a lot of the newer treatments tend to be very expensive. So the real issue is, how do you effectively ration care? And that's been a big issue, And so most money is spent on the last 6 months of life. So looking at death is part of the process of life, and understanding that we need to reallocate resources to people living and having productive lives, as well as end-term care.
Well, if you read the New York Times today, in the review section, there's a great op-ed piece about the medical industry and about electronic medical records.
Yeah.
That hospitals are now advertising to get doctors no EMR. There's going to be no electronic medical records, because there's such a problem and such an issue in putting all the data in and creating that people are forgetting about actual health care and just having to concentrate on these technical obstacles that create a problem for real health care to help people get better.
That's the problem, because I think originally it was to keep track of meds.
Well, there's two things. I mean, doctors always had charts. You're right. One of it was to take care of, make sure the next person on shift would know what meds they were on. The nurses would know, and there was a purpose for the information. The information then was co-opted by, guess who? The insurance companies, right? To prove that now you don't just get to be qualified as a doctor these days and then people believe that you actually know what you're doing.
Right.
You actually have to prove with every single patient that you treat
Right.
exactly what you did and why you did it. And if not, they won't pay you.
The guy who graduated last in medical school is still called a doctor. Steve Guttenberg is here, the Pride of San Quentin, and we're going to get to your other movie too. But who's in this besides Kevin Hart? He seems to be in every movie.
We've got Kevin Hart, and Kevin Hart. Right now we have no cast, and we're actually looking for two guys who could be in it, sort of be the warden and his assistant. Wait a minute. Say, Andrew and Pat. Oh, wait a minute. Are you guys available in July?
I don't know about Pat being my assistant, though. It just seems a little wrong.
Oh, it'd be okay.
Well, actually, I basically am. Yeah, right. But that's okay. So, is this going to be a? I want to get to your other stuff too, but is this going to be a feel good? What do you want this movie to do?
I want this film to do exactly what film and television should do: entertain and educate. It should create a place where your mind can roam and see historically what the creation of rehabilitation was all about, which is really an important part of our society. At the same time, see a story about redemption, about a man making something of himself, about the relationship between good and bad, and how you can overcome the odds.
How did this all fall apart? I mean, this guy was such a pioneer, and it seems like everything he was doing was working.
I think that the general population is angry at people that commit crimes, and they're angry at people that are alcoholics and addicts, and they blame them. Some of it's justified, some of it isn't. But the reaction from angry people is generally to react in a punitive way. And so the idea of, and a lot of people don't get any help in society, you know, especially people that are poor. So to say that, oh, the people that do the worst stuff in our country are going to get a lot of help is kind of a bad political statement. And so you have politicians that are going up for election, and they play into fear-mongering, and you know, that I'm not going to be lenient on anyone. You know, we're going to lock everybody up, and you're going to be safe. And it's that fear that creates a lack of understanding of the real problem. And I think Steve's right when he said, you know, we need leadership that can step out there and say, there's things we can do better, and there's a moral and ethical obligation to do it. It's not just about money.
In the prisons and jails I've been in it for panels and stuff, the ones that are run like this warden ran it, where they have rehabilitation, Alcoholics Anonymous, and programs, those guys are great. I mean, they're ready to go. Yeah. And I've talked to a lot of them, and I've helped a couple of them when they get out, and they're fine.
Wow, great for you. Good for you.
So what happens to the other guys? I mean, well, it just seems so simple, doesn't it, Andrew? Just to have a base program. I know there's money involved in politics and mean guards and all that kind of stuff, but
well, you know, maybe it really comes down to our society in general. Before there was a book that came out that was very, very popular I guess it came out in the early '60s or late '50s, called "How to Win Friends and Influence People."
Yeah, right. Still is.
Now, before that book came out, what was important was integrity and character. And what happened after, when that book came out and society adopted personality, charm, Machiavellian strategies and cleverness, and that's how you get ahead. It's not about being a really good person, it's acting like a really good person. You go into somebody's office and you see he has a baseball. So next time you come into his office, you go, "Hey, how do you like baseball?" You don't mean it. You just want that sale.
Yeah, and now it's 140 characters. I mean, your whole life is down to what you can write on Twitter or social media. I'm not sure we can solve all that.
A lot of that's accountability. As we've become more and more populated, there's less and less personal connection to people. Like, I always joke that, like, if you want to know your neighbors, move to Nebraska. If you don't want to know your neighbors, move to New York City. Yeah, because you're not going to know who lives even right next across the 6-inch wall from you. That's crazy. Right? Yeah. And I think that there's something about that people become more fearful the more crowded they are. And we see this in prisons as well, right? Like, the more densely populated a prison, the more problems there are, obviously. And the less you actually want to make a personal connection with people. And there's something about human beings that we haven't quite figured out how to be socially appropriate when there's a lot of people around. And a lot of this, I think, is going back to fear, that people fear consequences, and they fear their true selves, and they fear that the fact that they express themselves and their true selves is going to be accepted. And if it's not, there's people around them all the time that they're going to have negative consequences. So you have this fake sort of society where people have a social face And there's a great artist. I mean, Basquiat, Jean-Michel Basquiat. That's his whole thing, was showing the face, your social mask or face, was what people saw.
Well, it's all about self-preservation.
Right.
I mean, I've never tweeted anything bad about myself.
Right, and that was because he was an African-American artist, and people saw him as an African-American artist. And they only saw that mask of the color of his skin instead of the fact that he made incredible art. And I think we see that a lot in society.
You're listening to Clean Radio. We're all over the country now, and about to be a TV show at some point. Facebook.com/Clean Radio, @Clean Radio. Do you have a Twitter? Yeah, you do, but it's a weird name.
I do. It's at Steve Gutbuck.
What does that mean?
Well, it's
Gutbuck, right?
Gutbuck, yeah.
It's the password to his bank account.
Oh, now you, Andrew. Oh, what the, Andrew?
Sorry, man.
We can.
And I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to take the time to change it.
We'll
I don't
cut
have the
that
time.
out. And
Just added a 1 to the end.
I'm at POB Pat O'Brien because some moron has. Well, he's not a moron. He has my name.
You're hipper. You're much hipper.
And Andrew's at Clean CEO.
Which you have a disdain for.
Isn't that weird? Why would you? Well,
Yeah, why would you do that, Andrew?
It's the name of my company and my title. I don't know.
That makes no sense.
Andrew Spanswick at Andrew Spanswick.
Yeah, it's great.
Spell
Yeah,
Spanswick.
do something
Spell
like that.
Spanswick.
SP.
yeah.
Yeah, right,
right.
exactly.
By the way, and
I'm sorry.
if you have any 100 problems we talked about today, you can always call 888-601-6040. We have great people on the phone, right, Andrew? And they can identify your problem or help you or point you somewhere else or send you somewhere else. I mean,
yeah,
it's as
I mean, the
simple
thing
as
is that people often, we talk about this a lot, on average it takes about 7 years for people to pick up the phone and get help.
phone gets heavy.
Yeah,
Wow.
and so I think it's important to know that we have a line there where people, no matter what their background, resources, whatever, will find some sort of help for them. So, or if you just want to talk about things and discuss things, we have people there that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that can help you get through a tough time.
Hey, Steve, what's at the top of the pyramid about?
At the time period, it's
It's in
really
theaters now, right? And VOD?
Yeah, it's out right now. It's
Video on demand.
pretty interesting story, basically about high school and about peer pressure and about bullying and making the right decisions and having to go against the tide. And that's something that I think because of, interestingly enough, the internet and television and the greater amount of peer pressure there is, it really goes back to integrity and dignity and character. And what do you have inside? And do you have the courage to say to 100 people, I don't like that color. You all like that color? I don't like that color. I don't like that behavior. I'm not going to join in on that. And that's what the movie's about.
What brought you to want to do so many projects that have so much social relevance? Is that something
I've got great parents. I grew up at a terrific kitchen table where and that's what it really comes out, the kitchen table. And my parents had a great theory, and it was your thoughts become your actions become your habits become your character becomes your destiny. And I've always been able to remember that, no matter if I'm talking to the homeless fellow on 63rd Street and giving him some bucks, or I'm talking to the President of the United States or a CEO or somebody to that effect. Everybody has to be dealt with integrity and character, and you must come always from a good place, try to do the right thing, and at the end of the line, it'll be worth it.
Bobby Knight, who was a great coach for Indiana and won a championship during March Madness, I asked him once, I said, Bobby, all right, coach, I'm sorry, you didn't call him Bobby, how have kids changed through the years? You know what he said to me? Kids never change, parents change. That's a great answer, because that kitchen table no longer is there anymore. I
had a psychiatrist that said society started around the campfire or the fire.
Right.
And that's the way it was, and that became a kitchen table. And now it's, I don't know, Facebook.
Yeah, it's the Twitter. It's
unbelievable. And I'm guilty. I'm not going to. But it's unbelievable how many people just stare at their iPhone
when they're in a room of interesting people.
I do it all the time. We all do it.
Yep.
It's I live in New York City, and the amount of people walking on the street looking at their machines, and you have to say, in front of you, in front of you.
On your left.
Yeah, because people are getting hit by cars left and right looking at their machines.
Yeah.
I was in the car, you could be in the car with people and they're talking to each other through the machines.
I've sat at tables and texted people across me. Anyway, Steve's new movie.
By the way, I'm texting you right now.
I hope so. They're texting me. They only got a couple minutes here. Hey, Steve, what a great career, and you've brought laughter and love and morality and just to so many people. And I'm really at the top of the pyramid you can get now on VOD or it's in theaters. That sounds great, by the way, and that's relevant. And The Pride of San Quentin. And
I've got an interesting film coming out this summer. It's a creature feature. It's called Lavalantula.
That's right. You know what? I was going to bring that up, but I couldn't pronounce it.
Lavalantula, which is actually a true story about Los Angeles. I don't know if you remember 10 years ago, giant spiders invaded Los Angeles. There was a volcano in the Santa Monica Mountains.
I married a couple of them.
And I play, true story, of course, I play somebody who kills all the spiders and saves Los Angeles. But it's made by the same fellows who did Sharknado. So hopefully,
nice. Cool.
So hopefully we'll have a success with it.
All right.
Lots of stuff. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks for having me on the show,
Good to see
guys.
you, man. I love you.
Great pleasure.
You're just you walk the walk and talk, and you look good, by the way.
Thanks, man. I'm working on it. I love you too, Pat.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
a wonderful guy. Andrew, same here.
Yeah, and we're available for that movie, Andrew and I.
That's right.
Well, you guys just don't cost me a lot of money. If you're $1 million a day, it's you got Bruce Willis money. I just can't do it.
I'll do it for a Snickers bar.
You got it. Snickers bar.
I'll do it for $2. Thanks for joining us today. This is Clean Radio. You can reach us every Sunday night. Remember, be nice to yourself. Do something good for yourself. It makes a difference. Good luck in March Madness. Don't spend the house on a college kid who might have got a text from his girlfriend. See you next week.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.